Hello, we're back again with another podcast. This is my son Tanya, and I am Martina Nyamainashe on our podcast, Speaking My Truth. So today, our topic is still based on what we started talking about last week, which is developing the greatest relationship with yourself. So today we want to touch on how to change your life stories, because we have got so many different ways we can perceive our experiences, but at times we can have so much negativity towards our experiences that we fail to truly experience the purpose of it. And then we find that it is recurring and repeating itself in so many ways. And until we actually understand the purpose of that story, we can't change it. And most of us, we want to run away from the stories instead of unfolding or opening up the stories as gifts. So today, I want to look at how we can actually change the narratives of our stories that seem to be negative. What's your take, Tanya?
Um, I wrote a blog about this actually narratives. Um, the it's not even like it was a point. It still happens now, but
Mm.
it was something that I thought was very strange that used to always happen to me when I'm out or if I'm on the train or something, just wherever. Someone would come up to me and start telling me their entire life story, all the traumatic things that have happened to them, and I'm just there like, why are you telling me this? And it happened so often that I was just like, does it say tell me your life story on my forehead or something? Like, why why is this happening? I used to think it was so weird. Um, until I spoke with you about it.
Yeah.
And then you told me that what's happening is you get a unique perspective into the lives of other people and what they're going through. And what they're really doing is they're unloading, but at the same time, they're teaching you.
Yeah.
And before I used to be like, oh gosh, here's another person coming to tell me some more things that I don't really need to know or care for. But now it gets a little bit exciting because I'm just like, okay, so this is what happens when, for example, this is what happens when you grow up in an abusive household,
Yeah.
and this is the results of it. Now you're stuck in this relationship that is unhealthy for you because that's all you've known your entire life.
Yeah.
So um, it kind of took a turn for me,
Yeah.
just seeing how the narrative unfolded, and it gave me definitely a different perspective on how I should look at the things that happened to me in the past, and being like, okay, so this is why I act a certain way, or
Yeah.
this is why I react this way when this happens.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the narratives that we have in our lives and the narratives that we tell ourselves have a big impact on how we develop as we grow older
Mm-hmm.
and how we are as people.
Yeah.
And I think people should heed the fact that um, the way you speak about what's happened to you has a very big impact on how you live your life.
Definitely does. And because we've been so used to talking about this narrative in such a negative way,
Hmm.
very rarely do we talk about happy childhoods unless we start to see an old picture. And then we
Hmm.
can only talk about a momentary happy childhood. But most of what we hear is, oh, my childhood was suffering, my childhood was... Even those people that seemed to have a lot of money and seemed to have everything going on for themselves. And if you really sit down and listen to some of them, it's like the past, the childhood was so traumatic that they can barely get it together in their adult lives.
Hmm.
But then, what if you change that narrative, the negativity of it? You see, this was my story. When I was young, I was called Ness, nicknamed Ness, by my grandmother. because I was named after my auntie. And so she was a nurse. So I was also called nurse based on that. So for me, I didn't like it. But then that in itself was a prophecy that then led me into the career of nursing, that then led a lot of stuff to unfold in my life. But the way I viewed it was that it was like I was forced into it. It was not my choice. I did not want to do this. So there was such a very negative story about it. And based on that, I hated the things that I was doing. And I tried so many times to change my career and do something different. Was at the beginning, I really wanted to be a teacher. But then when I started to heal myself, and then I began to see a new perspective to my past life story, is that it had to unfold the way it did. Because I had to become who I am today based on the stories that had happened in my past. Because right now I'm a teacher, but I wanted to be a teacher at the beginning, but that was not part of my destiny. The destiny was the teacher was at the end of the healing career. So, so until I changed the perspective, I couldn't understand where I was going. So I was constantly trying to go. I tried to do computer programming. I tried to do lots of other things that I tried to do just to get away from my nursing career. But all of those things didn't happen. They didn't work out. And I used to look at it negatively. So there was something causing it. Someone was to blame. I was not responsible for it. What was wrong with me? Why were things not working well the way I wanted them to work? Why was this? There was always these things that were so negative. And based on that, even my career was making me miserable. Even though it was paying my bills and I was living well through it, but I was not enjoying it because I had a negative narrative based on that story. So when I started to change these negative narratives that I had, the stories in healing, the emotions they had, they were not created by anyone else. These emotions were what I created based on what I was feeling about the experiences that I was having. So I was giving away my power and not using it in an appropriate way. So when I started to change the stories, how I perceived myself, how I perceived my experiences, when I looked at the things that I thought were meant to hurt me, and then looked at them, and actually no, they were actually redirectives. They were taking me in the right path that I was meant to take. Then I saw the experience differently.
Mm-hmm.
I could see the joy and everything else that was in it that I didn't see, because all my focus went on I was hurt, I was rejected, I was this and all on the negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when I changed that, then that helped me to now come into alignment with what I was meant to be. My destiny began to unfold in the appropriate way. So when I experience things these days, I don't say that I'm not human. I'm human. I sometimes go down the negative path as well and I think negatively. But because of self-awareness, there is a place where I stop myself. I say, hold on a minute. There's a purpose for this experience. Why are you focusing only on the negative? If you looked at the positive side of it, how are you going to unwrap the present if you're constantly thinking about it negatively?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you unwrap it and start to think about the possibility of the good and the bad and looking from all different types of angles on that experience, then I change my story. And when I change it, things unfold the way they are meant to unfold. Because most of the time we want to have control over how life is happening.
Can't control
Yeah. We can control that, but then it's a lot of hard work and a lot of misery involved in it. Yeah. Why would I want to work hard if I can just allow things to unfold the way they're meant to be unfolding?
that and let things flow.
And then let things flow and go with the flow. See, because that going with the flow allows us to live in the moment of here and now. Because I'm not in yesterday. I'm not thinking about what happened. It was wrong. I should have done this. I'm guilty or whatever it is that happened yesterday. I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about the joys and the happiness and the love and the kindness and things that are evolving around me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not dropping myself or living in the future, because that causes a lot of anxiety, because I don't know what tomorrow holds. So I can't live in the future. So I have to live here and now, which means that the story of the past can hold me in the past. The story of what it's going to be like in the future can't hold me there. So then I bring myself into the
Back into
present
the
each and
present.
every day, which then allows me to see different perspective of the past and the future.
Hmm. So, with that being said, when it comes to taking in those narratives and adjusting your perspective on how it's affected you or how it's meant to be taken in, what do you think is the important part of changing, or which part of the changing of the narrative is important?
Embracing the story.
Embracing it.
Embracing the story. It was meant to be. It happened the way it happened because it was meant to be. If it was not meant to be, it would not have happened that way.
Mm.
So embracing the story does not make it like, well, we like to do, the two polarities that we use here, right, wrongs, and good, bad. So as humans, we live in that perspective where we call things good and sometimes bad. So the story can have a lot of negativity in it,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we like to call bad. But then once we name it bad, then the frequency of it is,
But
and then it's vibrating on those lower frequencies that make us feel bad.
the ripple effect has a lot
Yeah.
of.
And then we create that reality that is
Mm-hmm.
based on that part. But what if we change that situation? We really look at the perspective of that situation. It is what it is. It has happened the way it has happened. So, what is it in this situation that we are meant to learn from? What is it we are meant to learn? What experience did this situation mean to bring to us?
Mm.
Yeah. Then, if it is, how would I say, I don't want to touch on a topic that gets people very sensitive.
Go on, go. Why not?
uh,
Speak your truth. That's the
I'm speaking
podcast,
my truth.
isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the situation we want to. Oh, I'll talk about what Mother Teresa did. She said, "Oh, don't call me to rallies where you are going or raising placards against anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Call me where you are working for peace."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which means she understands that creating the reality of peace is what brings peace,
Mm-hmm.
instead going against what has happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going against what is happening is not going to produce any different kind of outcome.
Yeah.
It's only going to produce everything that is associated with
That
against
situation.
that situation.
Okay.
Yeah. So what you think you don't want is what you're actually creating.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want peace, if I want peace, then I have to take the walk of peace. What am I going to get when I'm vibrating in the vibrations of peace and
Peace.
frequencies of peace? It's peace. That's what I want to create.
Mm.
Yeah.
I see.
So whatever experience that I have, let's say I've had the experience. I'll talk about one experience that actually got me thinking a lot. Um, I was coaching a woman that was raped. So she had a child in that experience.
Mm.
And her narrative was, why did this happen to me? Because based on that, she couldn't afford to pay for the children's school fees. She was really suffering. She was at a point of really, really low point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going through with the program of just helping her to raise her emotions to a positive part. And in that, I learned one thing that was very, very important through her. The situation that she was in was meant to happen the way it happened. Because that child she had needed to come through her. And I'm not saying that this is right or, things have to happen like that. I'm just talking about the experience that I had when I was going through a coaching with someone. And because that child needed to come through her. So that had to happen. So it was already in the, how would you say, in her destiny.
Mm-hmm.
that this was a situation that was going to happen to her. She was going to bear a child through this. And this was part of her spiritual growth. This was part of her choice before she came into this life. This was part of her agreement she had with this child before they existed in this world. So to me, it was shocking. Like, what? How can anyone choose something like this?
Mm-hmm.
So it was also a learning process for me. But then having to understand that it takes a lot, because I'm also on the collective consciousness of it's wrong. It should not be done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But then it was done. We can't change that. But then what do we see, or how do we look at this perspective now
Afterwards.
afterwards? We can go against and blame and help her blame and all this and accuse and all the other things that we do with this to make the situation what we call right. But does it really make it right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the embracing the situation is understanding this has happened. If it was not meant to happen, there was nothing, it would not have happened. Nothing would have made it happen if it was not meant to.
Mm-hmm.
So now that it has happened, how do we navigate the story? What is the good in this? So the good is the child that came.
Mm-hmm.
Because this child has a great purpose in our reality. Who knows what this child has come to do in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
in this earth? Who knows, what changes this child is going to bring about? So we can't change those things, but we have to embrace them and then help the people that have been in those situations to navigate the stories so they don't live for the next 60 years stuck
in that same
in that
story.
story. Because this is what we see is people are in mental health institutes stuck on stories that were made so many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
People are suffering as young children, in teens, based on the stories that happened
when they were kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we embrace that this was meant to be because it happened?
I mean, it's difficult for someone to. I mean, yeah, it's a difficult thing to embrace, especially when it's something so negative.
Yeah.
So
it's something that creates a very big impact that is either positive or negative in one's life. But then if we don't start looking at these experiences in a positive way, how are we going to change them?
We don't. We keep reliving them
until we get to a place where we are saying, okay, how do we change this? Or we are ready to change it. Yeah. So the lesson is not about it has to keep happening. It is happening. And we try to stop it or prevent it. But we have more and more and more and more situations like that because we are
pushing against it
instead of bringing peace to it.
I mean, yeah, what I'm hearing is it's all about eliminating the negative frequencies that we associate with certain situations and focusing on one frequency, which is either love or peace.
Yeah.
Because within those frequencies, such things don't happen, or those things don't have the space to operate within, because it's above the level of frequency of that negative stuff that happens. Yeah.
If you look at that situation, that example I gave earlier, with a perspective of love, what do you see? There's not going to be suffering for that woman because there's going to be a lot of people that want to help, right? And there's not going to be suffering for that child because there's no stigma that is going to be put on that child that you are fatherless. There is no shame that is going to be brought on that woman because you've brought a gift into the world. Yeah. If we look at it from the perspective of peace, it's completely different perspective, sort of story that unfolds, right? And when we're looking at it from the perspective of fear, it's a completely different
story.
Yeah. So we have to choose the frequencies that we want to look at the stories for, so we can change the narratives of the stories. It don't mean that we in our collective, they're still bad, they're still good. You don't take them away from that, but it takes our mindset to to change that so we can have less of those in our future.
Mhm.
But we can only change those here and now instead of focusing on
What's happened in the past?
exactly.
Interesting. I never thought of it that way.
It's the same thing with war.
Hmm. I agree with that actually, because we do say a lot about war. We preach that we want peace, we want love, no war, but we still go to war, and we still do things that lead to war, invasion of other countries, labeling people as certain things, and then going over there and destroying their land, taking over the operation, putting our own businesses and banks and whatever, and then we leave the countries torn apart, and then we say, "Oh yeah, we're doing this all in the name of peace." But in my mind, it's like, if you're doing it in the name of peace, is there a reason for you to go and invade?
But is that peace though?
No,
That's destruction.
exactly.
It's not peace.
Because you can't reach peace from through destruction.
No.
It doesn't make sense.
Because this is the thing I talked about in the previous podcast when we talked about understanding that we are all the same with the trees, with the animal, with the land. So if I'm destroying land, I'm destroying me, right? If I'm destroying the trees, I'm destroying me. If I'm destroying the animals, I'm actually destroying me because the source of everything is one. Yeah. So how is that bringing peace?
It doesn't.
Because you can't say you're bringing peace over here when you're destroying over here because you are everywhere. The air we breathe is everywhere. It has got no boundaries. It's everywhere. Does it make sense?
Yeah. I mean, especially when it comes to that topic of war. I mean, leaving the people alone is a more peaceful resolution than going over there and doing whatever you're going to do. But when you turn around and say, "Oh yeah, we're doing this in the name of peace," but then on the news you see there's been 100 casualties and 50 people dead, it's like, what peace are you really bringing to them or to us, really? Because now we're living in fear of retaliation from them, and they're also living in the same
So that means we are all functioning from the frequency of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we're functioning from the frequency of fear, what do? We are not being constructive. We are destructive. Because fear requires us to be defensive. It requires us to be angry. It requires us to be bitter and resentful. It requires us to be on the low polarities.
Exactly. And fear breeds hatred.
Yeah.
Which is the complete opposite of what we're after.
Yeah. So that's not going to help us. So what do? But then we can't change the people that are doing it. We can only change us. So us can create that frequency or that ripple effect that can then go across. So it starts with you and me, advocating for peace. Peace doesn't require you to go and march in the street.
No.
It requires you to
change in action.
Your mindset and your emotions. You attach to a frequency of peace. More people do that, then we can have peace. Yeah. But then we need to heal. We need to heal in order to change this, in order for us to rise and come into in alignment with the frequencies of peace and joy and love and all the higher frequencies. And without the healing of the hatred and the bitterness and the resentment and all these egotistic, fear-based emotions, we can move into that reality where we are raising the frequencies.
But how do you get the collective consciousness to understand or reach that point where they say, okay, we need to heal?
But the collective consciousness is all our thinking. So if more people change their thinking by healing, then the collective consciousness changes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not about, as I said, it's not about marching in the streets. It's not about going to war. It's not about, we've done this before. No, it's a completely different reality of changing how we think about situations. If I'm hurt Instead of going out there hurting to seek revenge, is how do I heal my broken heart? So I will start to heal my broken heart. If I heal my broken heart, then I can go out there with a healed heart.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking to hurt anyone. This is why for us Bible readers it says, love your neighbor as yourself. So if we are not in the reality of loving the self, I look myself in the mirror every day and there's something wrong with my ear. Oh my God, I look so ugly. Oh my God, my this. I'm finding so much fault with me. How can I go out there
and not find fault within others,
with anyone else? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it starts with you and me, just healing ourselves. I look myself in the mirror and I think, oh my gosh, this is wonderful creation. Mm-hmm. There's no fault in any of this. It was never meant to be in comparison with anyone else. It was just meant to be this uniqueness that is there. Then I will look at you and I'll see your uniqueness, whether you've got, you're blind, whether you've got disability, I look at your uniqueness and I see your beauty for the way you are.
The way that you were created.
Yeah. So I don't have to bring you down based on how you look. Yeah. So then I'm loving myself and I can love you for who you are. Mm-hmm. And I'm changing that narrative for myself. And then it changes the narrative for you. Because if I look at you that way, there's not going to be any enmity between us, right?
And as you say, we're all the same.
Yeah, we're all the same. Well, I don't know if there's a comparison in trees. One tree says I'm a big tree, and the other one says I'm a small tree.
You're both trees.
I don't think it's there. It only happens with us humans. That's why we've got a destructive streak that we work with.
I mean, I think it stemmed from Western psychology. Mm-hmm. I mean, we definitely, well, not we, but it definitely brought around this sense of egoism. Yeah. Where one is better than the other, or we think that we're better than the other.
And we're all striving to be better than the other.
Mm-hmm. Because someone believed or thought that they were more civilized than someone else, so they thought, hey, I have more rights than you. And it's had a ripple effect throughout history, and we've continued to have that that entitlement as we've battled through life. Yeah. And even now it's still the same.
But it's time to change it.
It is time to change it.
Yeah.
I think, like you were saying, it's about changing the narrative that we have within ourselves.
The narratives of our stories. So if I change my narratives, then your narratives will change too, because we've shifted. Yeah.
But that all stems from knowledge of self and self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Go back and really learn who you are. Learn yourself as well. And you can bring out a narrative that is beneficial not only for yourself but for the people around you. And then you'll start to see, like I was saying earlier, the ripple effect. One drop in the pond, it ripples out and it reaches even further and further. And the more people that you come into contact to, the more people will be affected by your energy, or they're influenced by your energy. They're like, oh, that person, wow, like that person is just makes me want to do better. And it just continues from there. All it takes is really one person to change, and the people around them will change also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, guys, this was it for today's episode. Just talking about narratives, just something a little light for you guys. But let us know in the description, in the comments, any suggestions that you want us to talk about, and we'll definitely touch on them. It was nice having this chat with you. It was very good talk. Very interesting. I learned a lot from this one, actually. Yeah. But yeah, that'll be it from us today. I hope you guys are well, staying grounded, keeping peaceful, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Okay, thank you for listening. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.